In this video, we're looking at example number 2 in lesson 12.2, the Pythagorean theorem. Okay. Remember, the Pythagorean theorem has to do with the lengths of right triangles. All right, we are using the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the hypotenuse in a right triangle. Remember, the hypotenuse is always the opposite side of the right angle, and it's the longest side. So here, right, here's your right angle. So the hypotenuse is opposite of it, and it's the longest side in the triangle. The two legs are always the shortest sides right next to the right angle. We can use our Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, to find the length of the missing sides. Example number 2, it says to the nearest tenth, that's going to be important. To the nearest tenth, what is the slant height of the pyramid, of the square pyramid? The slant height. Okay, well, here's the real height. Let's take a look at the picture. Here's the real height, right? Because it's a line going from the middle of the square up to the top of the pyramid, but they want the slant height. So that's talking about this right here, starting at the top of the pyramid. You're slanting down to this side of the pyramid. This is the slant height right here. Because it's kind of the height, but on a slant. All right, we need to figure out the slant height. Well, first we have to be able to figure out the slant height, we have to figure out where is our right triangle in this picture. Here's one right here. We have the height of the pyramid. And then here's another side of a right triangle. And then here is our slant height. See our right triangle right there? Now that we have a right triangle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared to figure out the answer of what the slant height is. Well, we know that the legs are the two sides right next to the right angle. So here, this side of the triangle is a leg, which they told us is 13.6 centimeters. And this side of the triangle is also a leg. We'll call that B. So we have the leg and the leg. And over here, this is the side opposite the right angle, which means your slant height in this case is actually the hypotenuse, and that's C. All right, so we know the length of A, which is 13.6 centimeters, but we don't know the length of B. I'm trying to think, how can we find the length of B? And we also don't know the length of letters of C, the hypotenuse. Oh wait, but look, down here, they do give us this information, 18.2 centimeters. That means this whole length of the bottom of the square pyramid is 18.2 centimeters. But we want to know what is the length of this right here. Try to think for a second, how can we figure out what the length of this is if we knew that this whole thing is 18.2 centimeters? Okay, if you're thinking in your head, well, this right here, this side, because it's talking about the height and the height goes down to the center of the square, if you're thinking that this side right here is half of the whole square, then you are correct. Okay, you have to take half of this because this whole thing is 18.2 to get the length of this side. So you have to do 18.2 divided by 2. Okay, 2 doesn't go into 1, but it does go into 18 9 times. 9 times 2 is 18. 0, bring down the 2. Add your decimal up here to keep the decimals lined up. 2 goes into 2 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. Oh, good. It's a terminating decimal. So here, this 9.1, We just figured out that the length of this side of our right triangle is 9.1 centimeters. Because this whole thing down here is 18.2, so this is half. Now that we know the lengths of A and B, we know that A is 13.6 centimeters and B we just figured out is 9.1 centimeters in our right triangle. We could figure out what C is by using the Pythagorean theorem. Because remember, the Pythagorean theorem has to do with the right triangles and the lengths of the sides of the right triangles. So let's plug in what we know. We have A squared, and we know that A is 13.6, so it's 13.6 squared plus B squared. Okay, B we found out is 9.1, so it's 9.1 squared, and then equals C squared. Okay, here's where you can use a calculator. Let's further evaluate this. We have to do 13 squared, right? 13 squared, so let's plug it in. 13 squared equals, I'm sorry guys, it's 13.6, my bad. 13.6 squared equals 184.96, so it's 184.96, because that's what 13.6 squared is. Plus, now we have to do 9.1 squared. 9.1 squared is 82.81. 82.81. And then it equals C squared. Okay, remember we're solving for C here. We don't know what C is. We have to get C by itself. So to do that, let's first combine our two numbers here. So we have 184.96 plus 82.81 equals. So when you combine these two numbers, it's 267.77, 267.77, and it equals C squared. Okay, to further solve for C, if it's C squared, to undo that square, we take the square root to cancel out the square. Whatever you do to the one side, you have to do the other side, take the square root. Now let's go in our calculator and we have to take the square root of 267.77, and it equals, now wait a second, that's a really long number. Let's go back to the problem up here and see what it says. To the here we go, to the nearest tenth. Good, so they want us to round it to the nearest tenth. Remember, the tenths place is the place right to the right of the decimal. Here's the tenths place. So we're going to round to the nearest tenth, it says in the problem. So if our answer, the square root of 267.77, the square root of it is 16.36, blah, 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 blah. To round it to the tenths place, in the hundredths places it's 6, so let's round up. So our answer is 16.4. So over here on our paper, 16.4 equals C, because we had to round our answer. So let's write it in a sentence. It's asking us, look back at what is the slant height of the pyramid? So you're going to write it in a sentence. The slant height of the square pyramid is 16.4. Well, what are our units? Let's go back. The units are centimeters. So it's 16.4 centimeters. Okay, now that you have finished example number 2, let's try the got it and then watch the got it video to make sure that we have that correct.